We do want to start in Ukraine, where a new standoff is underway this morning over the question of oil and gas between Russia and several key members of NATO. NBC News correspondent Erin McLaughlin has details.
In Germany, more than 40 nations brought together by the U.S. Tuesday, showing their support for Ukraine.
I applaud all the countries that have risen and are rising to meet this demand. But we don't have any time to waste.
In a significant economic escalation, Russia halting gas deliveries to Poland and Bulgaria, citing its new rules that unfriendly countries must pay for gas in Russian rubles. This as the war shows no signs of slowing down. Russian troops striking transportation targets in Ukraine, including a key bridge outside Odessa. The Russians also claiming complete control over the Kherson region. The mayor there says they've taken over City Hall, and he fears they're planning to hold a sham referendum in order to legitimize their presence.
We are, of course, totally against this because it's a territory of Ukraine which temporarily occupied.
Sitting across from the UN Secretary General at his now infamously long white table, Russian President Vladimir Putin said he hopes for a positive result in negotiations with Ukraine. The comment comes after his foreign minister warned the threat of nuclear war is real.
Loose talk of nuclear weapons, nuclear escalation, is especially irresponsible. It is the height of irresponsibility.
The United States now pushing forward with plans to restore its embassy in Kyiv, announcing the first American diplomats have arrived back in Ukraine. Western support on full display outside the capital Wednesday morning as they showed off anti-tank weapons provided by the British. This soldier tells us we need to have many modern weapons, anti-tanks. It's very important to us.
Erin McLaughlin reporting from Kyiv this morning. Joining us now, NBC News White House correspondent Carol Lee and Mark Polymeropoulos, a 26-year veteran of the CIA serving in both Iraq and Afghanistan, one of the agency's most decorated field officers. Good morning to you both. Mark, let me begin with you. Something we've been discussing over the last couple of hours this morning, and that is the rhetoric, it seems, stepped up rhetoric from the Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin during his trip abroad, meeting with President Zelensky in Kyiv, pledging more support, and then returning to Germany to Ramstein and forming this sort of NATO collective, this contact group of countries that are going to work on the question of Ukraine, but saying, we now want to weaken Russia. We want to destroy their capacity to inflict this kind of harm on another country, on another neighbor, or any further on Ukraine. Richard Haass expressed a little bit of reservation about that, given the nuclear stakes here. What did you make of Secretary Austin's comments?
Well, look, I think it was really long overdue. I mean, I see Secretary Austin, he envelops his Ukrainian counterpart in a bear hug. That's the bear hug seen around the world. What an incredible, inspiring moment. I jumped out of my chair. That's the America that I want to see. Because ultimately, for the last several years, Russia has been engaged in a hybrid warfare campaign against the United States, whether it's election interference, whether it's cyber attacks, whether it's bounties against our troops in Afghanistan. So it's finally time that we push back. And it's okay to say things like we want to weaken Russia, because in fact that should be the stated goal of the administration. I think that they have balanced out kind of the escalatory rhetoric, and at the end of the day, I think that if we see that the Russians would start moving kind of tactical nuclear weapons, U.S. intelligence is going to pick this up. But as far as I'm concerned, Secretary of Defense Austin's trip was a home run, and to just see him envelop his counterpart in that bear hug, that was a good moment for the United States, a great moment for the Ukrainian people.
Mark, let's continue talking about this. Expand it out a little bit more generally. I've never thought of Russia as an enemy. I don't think it's wise for the United States to declare countries enemies, whether it's Russia or China. We have to figure out a way to work with them on a global stage. But there's no doubt Russia sees the United States as an enemy. Whether we consider them enemies or not, they consider us to be an enemy. Vladimir Putin considers us to be an enemy. You look at state TV, they consider us to be an enemy. And while we have been trying to deal with Russia, while we have been trying to contain Vladimir Putin's worst instincts so he doesn't actually damage himself and damage the Russian people, He's invaded Georgia in 2008. He's invaded Ukraine in 2014, went into Crimea and has occupied Crimea since 2014. He has shot down commercial airliners. He's gone into Syria, committed mass atrocities, committed war crimes in Syria. You look at the attacks against the United States, the disinformation campaigns, election interference in 2016. What he attempted to do is, impede one of the most important things in democracy, in this country at least, and that is an American presidential election. Continued with the disinformation campaign. So I'm not exactly sure from his stooges on television, his stooges with newsletters, his bots that he sends across Twitter. I'm not exactly sure what the United States is supposed to do, but stop this man from being able to cause misery and continue invasions of other countries. We're not talking about going into Russia. We're not talking about deciding who their leader is going to be. We're just talking about stopping him from continuing his pattern of reckless, one reckless invasion after another.
Well, that's right. And I think, for the first time, we've seen a U.S. administration come into power and not kind of push forward this idea of a Russian reset. I was involved in some of these in the past, and I think a lot of us in the intelligence community would roll our eyes. And, sometimes administrations want to kind of, reset the policy with Russia, and we went along with it, but it never works. So, the Biden administration, led by a president who had, 4 decades of experience as a senator and, of course, as vice president, certainly understands the importance of the NATO alliance. And he knows kind of the true nature of Russia and Vladimir Putin. And so finally, we're at a point where we're kind of countering Russia. I do a lot in terms of, looking at the hybrid warfare space. And one of the things we've never done is push back on Russia. We are finally doing it. Secretary of Defense Austin's comments, we're now are open for the world to see. And I think that's a good thing because, again, it takes 2 to tango, and Russia is not interested in a partnership with us. I think we have to understand that, and we have to just counter it with the right policy.